Welcome to Budget Beauty, where I help you look flawless for less. Welcome back, and a very special welcome if you're new here. My name is Jen, and this is Budget Beauty. We do everything beauty on a budget, and that includes testing out new eyeshadow palettes. You guys are super excited about this release. I was actually super excited about this release, and that is the brand new palette from Natasha Denona. This is the I Need a Nude palette. This is actually sold out on Sephora. It's sold out so quickly. However, you can still pick this up off of Ulta's website. So I'll link it down below for you. When this was released, at first I was like, oh, it's a pretty palette, but I don't need it. And then the more I looked at it and the more I discovered that there's some really fun creative formulas in here, I decided that I absolutely needed it. So we are going to do a full eye look using the palette. So if you're excited, give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not. Turn your bell on because I upload lots and lots of new videos every single week. Like I said, I will link the Natasha Denona palette down below for you. It does retail for $69. You'll also find all the other makeup that I'm wearing in today's video if you would like to recreate this look, my favorite beauty boxes, and come join me over on TikTok for a little bit more beauty on a budget. I'm going to zoom you in and we're going to create a look with the brand new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. So I actually just came back from boot camp. I do boot camp outside. I do live in sunny Arizona at 5 a.m. So that's why I'm in workout clothing, but I am so excited to get ready for the day. I have some errands to run. I have some coaching calls today, and I'm excited to do a look with the brand new I Need a Nude palette. I will go ahead and insert close-ups of the palette as well as swatches for you. There's some mattes, there's some shimmers, and what I was excited about is there's some new shimmer wet metallic sparkly formulas that Natasha Denona has never done before. Her matte formula is really, really nice. I will say when I swatched the darkest brown shade in this palette called Silhouette, it didn't swatch the best, but swatches don't always mean everything. You really need to apply it to the eye to see how it blends out. Is it patchy? How does it perform on the eyes? I hope it performs well because that's the only dark matte in the palette. So I'll definitely be testing that out with you today. I am going to use as many mattes and as many shimmers as I can. This is the perfect cool toned neutral palette. This is perfect for everyday wear. This is great for bridal. This is also very office appropriate. There's nothing bold and out there with this color story. Now there's some pinks in here. There's some browns in here. There's some mauvey peachy shades in here. I mean, really truly the perfect cool toned neutral palette. So the first thing I'm going to do, as always, is prime my eyes with my MAC Paint Pot in Painterly. I use an eyeshadow primer every time I do eyeshadow. It keeps it in place, prevents it from creasing, gives the true opacity, especially with shimmers. I do get asked a lot about setting my eye primer. I do not set my eye primer with powder. Using the MAC Paint Pot is all I need. Just tap it in to make sure there's no creasing. So to get started on the eye look, I want to, like I said, use a lot of the shades in the palette to really give you a true review first impression of the formula. I'm thinking I want to go with maybe a peachy neutral look today, really using some of these more peachy toned shades. So I'm going to start with the shade Wit, which is this pinky peachy shade down in the corner, picking that up on a fluffy brush. Oh, there is a mirror in the palette as well. And I'm going to use that as my transition shade. Again, just utilizing a little more of the pinky peach shades. I have watched a few reviews of this palette and everybody leans towards the browns. And I want to give you another option with this palette if it's something you're considering picking up and you don't want to be limited to just brown neutrals. I want to show you how you can incorporate the pinky peach shades. So as always, per Natasha Denona formula, this is blending out and applying beautifully. Now there is a little bit of kick up in the pan, which means that it's pigmented, which we're not mad about, but I am getting zero fallout. So like I said, the typical really good Natasha Denona matte formula. I do have hooded eyes, so whenever I do my crease shade, I always pop it a little bit above the crease because that way when my eyes are open, you can still see that crease shade, that transition shade. I'm going to go into this shade here called Vogue, which is a little bit deeper than that transition shade, and I'm going to focus that just on the crease, not above the crease like I did with the shade Wit, but really just deepening up the crease itself. And the best way to do that is just that windshield wiper motion, back and forth, back and forth. This shade is also very, very, very pretty. You could use this as a transition shade as well if you wanted a little bit more pinky versus peach, but I think those two together pair really nicely. It also layered beautifully on top of Wit. It is not patchy, blendable, buildable as I expect. And then I'm going to go back into that first shade Wit that we used for the crease, and I'm going to use that basically to just blend out those edges. These two shades, I love, 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 love them. Now I do want to test out the shade Silhouette, which is that darkest matte shade in the palette. This is the one that I was saying didn't swatch the best. So I'm curious how this is going to apply to the eye. So I'm picking that up on a denser, fluffy brush, and I'm going to focus that in the outer corner, the outer V, to add some depth. So that's really pretty. It's definitely not as deep as I was hoping. So I'm going to go back into the shade in hopes to deepen that up a little bit and really pack it on to get that deep, dark outer corner. So that layered perfectly. Awesome. Really happy about that, that layered so well. And I was able to build that up and get that depth that I was looking for. It performed much better on the eyes than swatching. That's why I say you can't always go by swatches. This shade is beautiful. It's not patchy. It's layering perfectly. It's blending out perfectly. And it's really a pretty kind of purple-based deep brown. I really like that shade. Really, really like that. Going in with that same fluffy brush that we did the transition with, no added shadow. I'm just going to, again, as always, just give it a quick initial blend. I'm going to use my NYX glitter primer. I use this every time I apply shadow. It's my go-to for shimmers. It just keeps them in place, kind of like the eye primer, just prevents them from creasing. And when they're these wet foiled shades like we have in this palette, especially with indie shimmers, it really helps prevent them from creasing. I 100% have to use this shade Muse right here. This was really wet and foiled when I touched it. It was very wet and creamy when I touched it. Such a beautiful shimmer shade. The swatch of that, I went, oh, that's so pretty. So this is one of those newer formulas to Natasha Denona, and I'm going to focus that on about the outer 3/4 of my lid. Do you see that? Oh, wow. Okay, that is one of the prettiest champagne shimmer shades I've ever seen. That is so beautiful. So I'm applying this one with my finger. We will apply the next shimmer shade with the brush so I can show you the application with both methods. Wow. I mean, the sparkle of this is absolutely stunning. Look at that. It literally feels like paste when I touch it. It's very wet feeling. I knew that it would give this just stunning foiled look, and that's exactly what happened. So beautiful. Then I'm going to pick up the shade Delilah, which is kind of a gray, kind of gunmetal looking shimmer. I'm picking that up on a brush, and I'm going to put that on the inner portion of my lid next to that stunning foiled shade. That's also very pretty. It does have a little bit of that gray base, which ties in really pretty with the deep dark corner shade. It is fairly similar to the foiled shade, so I don't see much difference between the two. So I feel like we could have maybe went with another pinky shimmer for these types of looks where we're really focusing on pinks and peaches, because like I said, these two shades, although absolutely beautiful on the eyes, they don't look very different. And the only really true pink shimmer is this one down in the corner called Mia. This has a tiny bit of a pink to it, but this is really the true pink. So I'm going to pick that up on that same kind of flat, dense brush, and I'm going to use that on my inner corner. Oh, that's really pretty. Now that would have been pretty on the lid in place of Delilah. That looks, again, really similar to that first shimmer shade. This pink shade would have been really beautiful on the lid. It also makes a gorgeous inner corner highlight. This is actually a beautiful shimmer shade. I think I'm going to even pull that up a little bit rather than just focusing on the inner corner. I'm going to pull that up over that Delilah shade just a tiny bit, just to add that extra bit of pink that I really wanted in this look. Back into the shade Silhouette, which was that deep dark shade we used for the outer corner, I'm going to buff that on my lower lash line. And just pull that in with the outer corner as well. I will say this is a really beautiful shade. I mean, probably one of my favorites in the palette. My least favorite swatched, but one of my favorites actually on the eyes. And then I'm going to pick up the shimmer shade Ello, E-L-L-O, and I'm going to buff that on top of Silhouette just to give me that nice pretty shimmer lower lash line. That shade is really a pretty shimmer shade too. That would have even been beautiful with this foiled shade. It could pop LO, the deeper shimmer out here, and then pop the foil shade on the inner portion of your lid. I can just see endless looks with this palette. I mean, my head is spinning with all the different looks that I can create. So there is the completed look. Let me go ahead and pop on some liner mascara, and I'll be back to share my final thoughts on the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. So let's go over my final thoughts on the new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I really enjoyed this palette. I love the neutral color story. You know, I'm very much a color person, but neutrals like this that are a little bit different, that have some different formulas, different textures, that is the kind of neutral palette that I like. And I don't have a lot of cool toned neutrals. I know that a lot of people have the Natasha Denona Glam palette, which is also a cool tone neutral, more warm, which is also a neutral palette, but definitely more warm tone neutrals. I do not have this palette, and I really wanted to add some cool tone neutrals to my collection. The mattes are fantastic, just as I expected from Natasha Denona. The shimmer shades, especially this shade that we put on our lid here called Muse, that shade, absolute foil perfection. Like I said, I wish that these two were a little bit more different. Maybe this one again could have been swapped out for something a little bit more pink leaning, since this is our only pink leaning shimmer, although this is beautiful. Mia, which is in my inner corner. This palette though is beautiful. Like I said in the tutorial, I could see myself using this a lot. I'm already envisioning different looks that I can do, more brown looks, more peachy looks, more gray tone, cool tone looks. I feel like this is just the perfect everyday palette. If you're a neutral lover, if you love cool tones, or you want to try out cool tones, I think this would be an excellent choice. And it is the typical amazing Natasha Denona formula. The packaging, absolutely beautiful, high end as well. Again, there is a mirror in the palette. So I'm really happy with my purchase. Again, I can see myself using this a lot. I actually have some trips coming up, and I think I'm going to take this with me. So again, I will link it down below on the Ulta website since it is sold out at Sephora. I'll also link all of the other makeup that I'm wearing today if you wanted to create this full look, as well as my favorite beauty boxes, and come follow me on TikTok for a little bit more beauty on a budget. Definitely recommend the I Need a Nude palette.